Hey everybody, if you want to find out exactly what the problem was and how I resolved it, stay to the very end where I give a recap of the work done and what the problem was. Good morning, it's August and I don't want to be out in the heat. But I've got a Chevy Suburban 2500 and the brakes are pulling to the right initially when you step on the brakes. Sometimes it's kind of hard and then it lets up and it'll straighten out on its own. So it's not a consistent pull. But then when you take your foot off the brakes are slow to release, it seems like. So there's a lot of things that can cause pulling of a vehicle, and some of them would be like your alignment of your wheels, your tires. Could be bad wear on your tires. Could be something with suspension, like a lower control arm. Could cause it a sticking caliper or bad brakes. But what mine's kind of indicating is that I've got a bad caliper on my left side, on the driver's side, because it's pulling to the right, to the passenger side. It's slow to let up, so it's acting like either a collapsed line or a stuck caliper. So that's what I'm going to look at today. This may turn into just replacing both calipers on the front and bleeding out the lines to make sure I got some fresh brake fluid in here. But I started doing this already, then I realized maybe I should make a video about this because it could help somebody else. So I basically just took a hose and I connected it to another hose I had laying out around, and I siphoned out a jar and a half of fluid out of this container. I already did that, so sorry you missed that, but it was pretty dirty. And I just want to get most of this out of here because I'm going to fill it up with fresh fluid now, and then I'm going to take off this side first. I just want to look at what the calipers look like. I may just compress it and see how it responds today and then come back to this tomorrow if I need to replace the calipers. But if I do have to, I'm going to replace those calipers. I'm going to bleed out the system, and I'm probably going to replace the brake line on this side just so I've got what I believe is causing that pressure not to be delayed to this caliper / brake rotor, which makes it then pull on the right hand side, because as you brake, that wheel's slowing, so the slower wheel is going to cause the vehicle to pull to the right. While this one still hasn't started pulling, hasn't started braking yet, it would still be spinning a little bit faster. That's why it would cause your vehicle to pull to one side or the other. And then when you let off the brake, it just seems like it's slow to release the brakes. So it's got to be a collapsed line or clogged line or a bad caliper in a mix with just really bad looking brake fluid. So let's get some brake fluid in here. If anybody's ever tasted brake fluid, like and comment if you tasted something worse. But if I could only imagine what a baby diapers would taste like, it would have to be not as bad as brake fluid. It's probably the worst thing in the world to taste. Like and comment if you know something that tastes worse than brake fluid. Not that you ever want to taste brake fluid, but sometimes you got to dip your finger in something, and take a little taste to find out if it's transmission fluid, if it's oil, if it's brake fluid. Not recommended, but some people have been known to do it. Once I've pumped out the old fluid, bled out the old fluid, because it's going to take all 4 wheels to do this, I may go through a couple bottles of this just to make sure it's all out of there. Wow, the importance of a jack stand. I had put this jack stand under here, released the pressure off the jack just to lower the vehicle down on there, and it looked like it released is heavier than it's supposed to be. So I went to pump this back up, and the jack isn't working. So it's low on fluid. I just blew out the hydraulic cylinder. So don't trust your jack. Make sure you get some jack stands under there. I think before I pull this caliper off, I'm going to actually bleed out the old fluid in this line. All right, I'm going to punch a hole in the top of this so I can feed the tube down. Just kind of keep the tube from wiggling back and forth when I'm pushing brake fluid out of the system. Got these special wrenches that I purchased to be able to open the bleeder valve. Perfect, I got that. It's right there. It fits perfect. Well, that stuff happens. It broke off. So I'm just going to get me some new calipers. I don't want to fuss with trying to pull that out. Get stuck that hard. Just ran down, picked up some calipers, and now I'm gonna end up pulling this brake line off. Of course, I'm gonna do it right here so it doesn't drip onto my rotors. The rotors look good. I went ahead and picked up new brake pads as well, because if I looked at these, they are wearing, this one's got more than this one. And then I'll just use this as a spare. And yes, I do use brake pads spares sometimes. Like if I just want to do a quick job on a vehicle and one's a little wore, the other one's fine, I'll just replace the one that is wore down with the spare that I have laying around. That saves me some money and it's a quick job. The reason I'm just going to go ahead and do both of these is, number one, that broke off, the bleeder broke off, and I can't troubleshoot like I wanted to. But I'm going to replace both calipers and the brakes because I'm going on a trip next month, and I'm going to be pulling a really heavy load, the camper, which is about 32 feet, and that's lots of weight. If it's still sluggish, I'm going to replace this hose. The reason I'm not replacing it right now is because I'm afraid that it's kind of corroded up there. If I try to pull it off of my brake, and that causes more work this weekend, and I'm going to need this truck for next week. I'm going to pull this off, and I'm going to let the line bleed out. Since I'm changing out the calipers, I'm going to be bleeding them anyways. Here's a new caliper, and they came with the outer bracket as well. So it came with everything. The calipers and the outer brackets, and then the hardware. So it comes with a new one of these bolts here that goes in a brake line. And what I'm having trouble with right now is this brake line here. I can't get this nut out of this brake line. This copper washer is smashed in there and it's not letting me pull that out. So I'm gonna have to work on that a little bit, figure out how to get that out of there. Well, I'm out. I just pulled the cap off my hydraulic jack and found some fluid I bought a long time ago for it. I'm just gonna top it off to make sure that it's just maybe it doesn't have the push on the upper side of it, and adding some of this may do the trick. I just topped it up. Now I'm going to let the jack down. I'm probably going to see some hydraulic fluid come out, but at least I'll know it's full at that point. Yeah, a little bit came out, so it was pretty, I think it was kind of low. Let's put this cap back on there. Oh, great. I gotta pick up a new rotor now too. That's kind of odd the way it's wearing. Pad's not touching all the way on the inside, but the wear on this didn't really show that. And front rotors too. Going back to the store. Well, I'm pulling off the other side and this was stuck. This holds the caliper in place, and it just sheared off. Well, this job has gone way further than I thought. Since I had to go in and then get new rotors, I decided once I pulled everything off for the calipers and the rotors, I just go ahead and replace my shocks. Those were totally wasted, so I actually picked up some for the rear too. So I may be doing the rear calipers and braking another weekend as well. And then I went ahead and lubricated these things while I was in here. But now I'm basically just going to put it back together. I am going to bleed these out, and once I get them hooked up to the calipers, then we'll see how it, if it still pulls. If it's still pulling, then this line is clogged up. That's one side put back together. Now let's do the other side, and then we'll bleed them. You know, in case you wanted to see that, I wasn't going to show you really putting it together, but this is the caliper already put together, and then I just take these. It comes with the bolts here. I'll just take those out, put the bracket on first, and then the caliper. You see I just put the rotor on there. I cleaned it with some brake cleaner just to make sure it's nice and clean. I'll put this on here. Just first take these bolts out, get it put in place, and then have it together. Now the first thing you do is put this rotor on, and then I'm going to go ahead and put this piece that will go on. Oops. Just like that. Now that I got this on and the bolts torqued down, I'm going to go ahead and put the brakes on, and then I'll put the caliper in. Now I'm going to put the camera down so I can put the caliper on. Let's tighten these up. Caliper's on. The last thing I got to do is hook up this brake line, and then I think I'm going to take a break and finish this tomorrow. And basically I have two of these copper washers and the bolt. One like that, the washer on, that's going to go through the top. And there's going to be one on the bottom. And then line it up and tighten it up. The fluid that was leaking out was kind of clear, so I'm hoping that the brake fluid that was in the lines was not too bad. Otherwise, it'll just keep bleeding out any of the bad stuff. Just tighten this down snug, and then I decided I'm going to go ahead and bleed this now, and then I'll do the wheels tomorrow. I went ahead and filled up the reservoir almost all the way, because when I go to bleed it, it's going to push a lot of it out. I have to constantly be adding more brake fluid to the reservoir. So let me go get a helper to push the brake down for me. All right, now we're finally doing the bleeding process. You can see that I just got the calipers filled up now. I've got someone in the vehicle. They're pushing down the brake, and then I'm opening this up and letting the air come out and get pushed out. So you'll see the air bubbles come out, and they'll come into this jar. So, all right, push down. Let off. Push down. There's some air bubbles. Let off. Push down. Let off. Fluid's kind of dirty, so I want to get that cleaner. I'm going to keep pushing fluid out until it gets cleaner. So I'm just going to continue this for this side until that fluid gets so clear. Well, I decided to go ahead and replace this brake hose here, just because I didn't, after all this work, and I don't have time to be working on it this week, and that could be a point of restriction. So now I just got to bleed this line again. To look at the other line, I cut it in two. I don't know if it doesn't really look like it's restricted or swollen on the inside. It actually kind of looks okay. It seemed like fluid was flowing through it okay. I just didn't want to take the risk. I did have a lot of trouble getting this off though. It was all corroded. I had to heat it up, be very careful of the wires that were up there. Heat it up and spray it with PB Blaster. Finally, with the vice grip, I got it to break free. Once I had it off, I went ahead and ran down to the parts store and picked up this brake hose. So now it's on there. I got some more work I want to do with the truck today. I'm going to rotate the wheels front to back. I'm going to put some more, some new shock absorbers in the back of the truck. But that's pretty much it, other than me bleeding the brake lines. And I'll leave an update in the comments, I guess, how well it worked out. If it's pulling to the right, if it was pulling to the right, it would have to be something with suspension. But the way it was acting, with it kind of delaying on the left side, but then pulling to the right side, and then it was a slight delay of when it seemed like it was releasing the pressure off the brakes, so it was spongy and pulling to the right. So that tells me it's either the caliper slow or this actual brake hose here was bad. So since I was in here and it needed new rotors and the brakes were getting close to on the one side, I went ahead and just replaced everything. And so you saw the video, so you know a lot of things can cause a vehicle pulling to one side or another. But what it turned out to be on this vehicle was that brake line on the driver's side. So you'd hit the brakes, it would pull real quick. It could actually be very dangerous on a slippery road or in heavy traffic, because it was a pretty significant pull, very sharp, but then it would level back out. And it was that brake line on the left hand side. You saw on the video where I replaced everything. Initially I thought it was either the brake hose, or the caliper, and it did turn out to be that brake hose. Although the brakes did need to be replaced, the rotor did need to be replaced, and the calipers, well, I couldn't bleed them, so they were going to have to be replaced anyways. But the one thing I didn't do in that video is I didn't replace the passenger side brake hose. I took it out on the road for a test drive, and it started diving to the left really quick. Not as bad as it was to the right initially, but it would just drive and it would jerk. And I was like, and pull initially and then level back out. And it didn't seem sluggish anymore. The brakes came off really quickly. So what I did is I went out and bought the brake hose for the passenger side. I replaced it. I drove the vehicle, and it is it brakes nice and evenly now in the forward direction. I am going to go back and replace the back brakes another weekend, just so I got brand new brakes all the way around the vehicle. And the hoses are probably bad back there too, but I just want really good braking in a heavy vehicle like this when I'm pulling a big load. And I'd rather just replace everything than take any risk in knowing that I've at least done everything one time. Hopefully this helped you guys with your vehicle. If you had the same problem, please like the video. Subscribe if this was helpful to you, and you want to see more videos of me repairing just any vehicle that I might have for my personal use. So thanks for watching, and have a great day.